What's up, Amazon sellers? Today, I'm super excited to bring someone that I've been following for a long time, but also has helped thousands of people in the Amazon game. This is Samara, Amazon FBA like a boss. And the reason why I'm very interested to understand about her is not only is she an Amazon seller herself, but also the fact she's helped other people, but also she runs a family life. And I'm interested to understand how she manages and juggles her time, but also as well the other constraints in the way she operates her business and also helps other people, and especially around cash flow and scaling Amazon businesses, and what we can learn from her that's going to help us be more resourceful and successful within our businesses. Stay tuned. Okay, so I'm super excited today to have Samara, Amazon FBA like a boss, on the channel, and obviously me to interview and ask her questions around not only her business, but also what she's seen around helping other people. So Samara, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for, taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know you're super busy, but if anyone doesn't know who you are, can you give us a little bit of a rundown about who you are and what you're about?
Sure, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to connect. And so my name is Samara. I am an Amazon FBA seller. I've been in the game for 9 years, so I've survived the long haul and lived to tell the tale. And for the past 3 years, I've also transitioned into coaching around Amazon FBA arbitrage and wholesale.
Fantastic. So 9 years, you've been doing it a lot longer than I have. So honestly, I love that. So well done, well done. What I want to do is I just want to kind of really break this down into a couple of sections. Number one, I'd like to find out more about you, your selling journey in the Amazon business. And we talked a bit off air. You're very interested still having, your fingers in the business, because helping other people you feel that you need to know. And I love that. That's fantastic. Number two, I'd really love to learn about new beginners and like what you've seen to help overcome those. And then number three, I talked a bit about it earlier, family life, juggling everything. You're like doing so much. I'm super impressed, and particularly around teams, but also some other considerations around financing that I'd love to learn more about. So if we just get started, can you tell us a bit more about your Amazon journey, and in particular your Amazon business, like where it is now, if you're happy to share like top line revenue, but also as well how you got there and like maybe some of the struggles you faced on that journey?
Wow, that's one to break down for sure, isn't it? So I was working for the local authority. I was a housing manager operating at middle management, so I've got some management experience. I am going to be vulnerable. We'll go straight in and say, so I'm neurodiverse. I have a triad of diagnoses. I'm bipolar, I'm autistic, and I've got ADHD. So as you can imagine, it was quite problematic to employ me at that point in time, and basically the pressures of working full-time for the council alongside managing my family. I was having some relationship issues as well at the time. I had a nervous breakdown. So my Amazon FBA business was like a phoenix rising from the ashes, if you want to say. And so I took voluntary redundancy from the council, and with that money, I'm left thinking, right, what can I do with this 4-figure sum of money that's going to allow me to try and find some equilibrium and some balance into my life and create a sense of stability. But being the ambitious career woman that I am, I obviously didn't want to take a drop in salary. I'd been earning pretty well with the council. So I started selling badges and certificates, basically homemade items. But this was the days of Microsoft Word as your graphic design software. So these items were not wonderful, I have to say. So I was selling them on eBay, maybe generating probably £500 to £1,000 a month. So I was anywhere close to what I wanted to be in terms of financial revenue. And then I found out about Amazon FBA, and I thought, well, this is going to be a game changer for me. I hated packing up orders. I don't have a great attention to detail. So printing off orders, going to the post office every day. Oh, I couldn't be bothered with that fast. So learning that FBA would take that fulfillment piece of that jigsaw away for me and do it better than me was absolutely phenomenal. So from there, my FBA business was started.
Fantastic. My God. That was what, 9 years ago? Was that right?
Yeah, that's it.
I love it. Thank you. First things first, thank you so much for being honest. I appreciate talking about like these times. I remember a time I was fired for gross misconduct, and I called my sister up and I cried down the phone.
Yeah.
I thought my life is over. I was 26 years old. And ironically, looking back, it's probably one of the best days of my life, but at the time it felt horrible. And I like your phoenix out the ashes. I think that's an incredible, you see it. And I think if anyone's watching, if you go through these hard times, it's these moments, they change you, but they can be in a very positive way. But at the time it feels horrible. So if you're going through it now, don't worry, it'll be fine. 9 9 years ago you started that. Tell us about the journey. Like, can I ask, where are you now? Like, top line revenue, you happy to share that in your business?
Yeah, so I have had peaks and troughs, and just to caveat that, really, that's been through personal choice. There's been periods of my business operations where I wanted to take a little bit of a backseat to enjoy my life and the pleasures and freedoms that come with when you finally attain some degree of financial independence. It can be very easy to go all in to that hamster wheel of constantly wanting growth and scaling, and it can almost become an addiction. So there's times I had to coach myself through that and say, no, hang on, there are other things in your life that you need to give more focus to at that point. So I've done 3 million over 8 years. When I started coaching, I realized very quickly that I'm going to earn more money from coaching. And this is a bit of a taboo to admit. I find there's Amazon FBA coaches can get a bit of a bad reputation. But frankly, I've worked far harder in my coaching business than I ever did in the Amazon FBA business. So the margins are much higher in coaching. So I am still actively selling on Amazon. We probably do about 300 to 400K a year at present, but it's running on the back burner, I would say, because I actually love coaching far more than I do selling on Amazon.
Thank you for that. And thank you for being, honest. I think, oh my God, you've talked about so many things which are so true. Coaches do get a bad rap. You are right, the margins are higher in this, 100%. But some people are really good at doing software development. Some people are good at teaching software development, for example. And the same thing in Amazon, but the very best people at software development will probably be the worst teachers because they can do it really well, but it doesn't mean they can teach it. And it's a different skill set. And I think you've got to realize that. And I think, massive respect for you for being open and honest about that, but also the fact that you're still managing that business. And can I ask, is it wholesale? Is it OA? What's the situation? And do you have a team as well?
Yeah, so it's probably about 50-50. And again, when you look at the quarters across the year, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, I do have a different strategy. So those figures don't stay finite 50-50. There are times I'll put more effort and money behind one over the other, depending on seasonality. I do have a team. So I have a VA. I actually got to retire my hubby. So my husband now runs the Amazon FBA operations to allow me to step into my zone of genius, which is the coaching. So it's very much a family business, family legacy business. For us, that's really important as a family. My husband came from a corporate background as well. He's a chartered surveyor. He does a little bit of ad hoc work, but mainly it's him doing the packing. We don't use a prep center. My husband, bless him, is our prep center. And I still do a bit of sourcing myself because I think it's very important to ensure one's skills are always kept up to date. Amazon are maestros at efficiency driving, at bringing in new tweaks, new developments, and it's really important that I stay abreast and ahead of any policy changes, etc. And whenever there's new software that comes out which assists with sourcing great products, it's vital that I understand how to use that muscle to best advantage. So yeah, I still do a bit of sourcing myself, along with my VA. We've got a fourth family member who does the purchasing. So I've hired him as our purchasing manager. And then, it's hubby who rolls up his sleeves every day with the labeling and packing.
Fantastic. No, I love it. I think two things. It's nice to be able to get the family involved, but also as well to give them flexibility, like maybe they can get out of the corporate world and obviously work for the family business. And that's brilliant. And I love that. We'll talk about later on, like the family side, like how you manage it all. But I think there's another thing you talked about there. And I think it's a really important point is, I talked about it with my team. I said, I was in like an event and they were like, wow, come on, we need to do big numbers. And I was like, I text my ops manager and I was like, should we go for like 8 figures? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then like a couple of months later, I met him in the Philippines and I said, okay, cool, 8 figures, but why? And we kind of came to the point of like, it wasn't going to make us any happier. It was going to give us more problems. I think it's really important that you can get caught on that what's it called? Like roller coaster, hamster wheel of like more. But like actually it comes detrimental towards your happiness. And I think massive respect for you for the fact that you've understood that and you're okay to say, look, you know what, I'm not going to grow more. I know where I enjoy. And I think that's a really important point for people. Like if they're looking at OA, wholesale, whatever, or even outside of the Amazon businesses, just really, as you go through your daily life, understand what you really love and keep focusing on that. Because the one thing that I say, I see from you is the fact that you love the coaching side and you're constantly creating content around it, constantly supporting it. I hear positive things, but the fact that that comes in what you do. And as a result, you're willing to work so much harder on it.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes in my Amazon business, like, I outsource it. I'm like, oh my God, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do this much, but I'm quite honest about that. I don't want to do so much work. So thank you so much for that. And I think it's really important. The fundamentals of Amazon don't really change, but the nitty gritties, keeping your hand in it is very important with the sourcing. So let's kind of move on to a bit about new starters, new beginners. You've helped thousands of people. I've seen it. I've heard very positive things about obviously your program that you do. Also, you're quite selective. But tell me a little bit about like what you've seen from new beginners, people getting into the Amazon space. What are the kind of common mistakes, behaviors that you see around that?
So the first one I would say is around scarcity mindset versus abundant mindset. I have probably over 2,000 DMs over a month period, and a lot of the questions I have. So this is pre-starting. So pre any coaching, pre-starting the Amazon business, people will constantly say, I've been watching YouTube videos and the gurus say that FBA is oversaturated. And I'd say, hang on. In every single, short Instagram clip, TikTok video, when people are unboxing or buying new products, or it's Christmas time and they've got their decorations out, whenever you see an unboxing video, they are buying from Amazon. Unfortunately, it's a sad fact that the high street is nearly dead. Much as we all love from a moral point of view to be supporting small independent businesses on the high street, we can't pursue something that's in a natural decline. So the small independent businesses have now, the ones who are sensible and savvy, adapted their operations and their selling on the world's biggest platform, Amazon. So I would categorically say on a macro level, I don't think FBA is oversaturated at all. In fact, the more people buy on Amazon, of course, it stands to reason, the more sellers are required. On a micro level, yes, if you're doing OA, RA, you're going to get some listings that are oversaturated. But my strategy is to teach a very wide inventory. So you're essentially having hundreds, if not thousands, of mini income streams. So yes, if one product does get oversaturated, you've got many others to fall back on, thus lowering the risk. So definitely something around scarcity. I always say, look, Amazon pie, there's plenty of pieces of that pie left, and there's plenty of room at the top for the people who are actually going to pursue it, see it through, and take it seriously.
No, I like that. And you talked about like mindset. So you talked about scarcity mindset, or like it's saturated. And I appreciate like a lot of people watch YouTube channels or like TikToks or whatever they are, like really quick. Like it's the kind of like the highlight reel. It's the news because it's sensationalized, but it's generally what you see is the bad stuff. It's not the truth. Yeah. Are there any other kind of things or like common traits that you see? I hear people like get rich quick schemes, or like, are there other things that when people are thinking about going into this business model, there's scarcity mindset? Are there other things whereby maybe they're coming at it from the wrong perspective, or how you help shift their perspective into say this is what the expectations are and how to best approach it?
Definitely. I think if you don't have a business background, it can be very easy to oversimplify Amazon FBA, and it's a golden egg that's going to convert you from zero to hero overnight. I do think it is one of the best business models out there for the vast majority of people, but they have to understand, anyone who's listening, it's going to be dealt with as a real business. It's not passive. So that's actually one of the common issues that arises, that people think it's passive income. Of course, when you look at private labeling, after a substantial period of time, it becomes more passive. But Amazon FBA in any shape or form is never going to be purely passive income. So there's a lot of education that has to go around actually the level of work, time, commitment, passion, energy, money. So much has to go into that recipe before you can bake and produce that perfect FBA model.
Can we talk about that pie? Can we talk about so if anyone's right now thinking about getting started and, you talked about the ingredients, time, money, effort, kind of like knowledge, should we say, what would be like the ideal situation? So if someone came to you and said, look, this is my situation. I've got X amount of time, X amount of money. This is where and also like kind of their expectations of where they're looking to take it. Are you able to share around that? Like, what do you generally see kind of be the ideal situation? Because I know there's about 1,000 TikToks where it's like you can start with £10 or $10. You're like, you can't. Like, good luck. You can't even buy an account for that much. But what's the kind of like ideal situation, would you say, for the cooking, the ingredients?
Yeah, I initially, if we identify cash now, I used to only work with students and clients who had £1,000 to invest. We have over time brought that down to 500, but with the proviso that you fully understand that your results are going to be proportionate to how much cash you put into that business. So when we talk about 6-figure businesses, we're talking revenue, we're not talking profit. That's another common mistake. And I think to get 6 figures in year one, you will 100% need to invest a 5-figure sum, whether that's all in one go or more commonly dripped in, reinvested, compound effect. There will be a 5-figure investment involved, no doubt, in order to get that 6-figure goal.
And what do you look at? So that's money wise, and I think that's really good. So thank you so much. Orange bars aren't profits. Sorry, guys and girls. That's not the reality of the world. I don't get to take home all my money. But the question for you is, what about time-wise? So people looking to start this business, and I'm sure the majority of people are probably going to watch this, they're probably going to have a job. That's like, I'm guessing a lot of your customers, or should we say the people you coach, they have jobs. So how much time would you say is the minimum, and what would be the ideal amount that people could do this? Obviously more, if they're infinite, that'd be the best.
Yes, I've been coaching for 3 years now, and I've been able to come up with a sum of 10 hours a week. That's the minimum that I expect from anybody who I extend an offer to work with. But again, the more you put in time-wise, or the more resources you have around you that can facilitate you putting more hours into the business, or simply more hands on deck. If you've got family members or older teenagers, and many of my clients are in family setups, they are working, but they've got older children, they've got partners. It's very much about building this family business. So identifying within a family unit, what are your particular strengths? Where can we make time sacrifices? Many of us will scroll inanely through social media for at least an hour or two a day with no focus, nothing to gain from it aside from just wasting time, often looking at holidays or lifestyles that we want to attain. And I say, well, put that phone away and roll up your sleeves and work and build and take the first step towards creating the very same lifestyle that you're watching with love hearts in your eyes on social media. Don't enjoy someone else's passion and goals. Go and do it yourself. And if that requires sacrifice, then that's what is needed.
I won't lie, I do it as well sometimes. I sit there and I find myself scrolling. I'm like, Tom, what are you doing? Like, Instagram or Facebook Reels are so kind of like addictive sometimes. But you see it, some people spend more time watching other people do it than they're willing to do it themselves. And you've got to put the work in. That's it. You've got to make the work. I'd like to kind of move on. We talked about it off air. Like, it's a really important point for all sellers, but in particular in the Amazon business model, and something particularly for you and generally the demographic that you coach around. Yeah. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about, should we say, Amazon sellers. If you want to know, if you're doing 6 figures, 7 figures, the majority of the time that is going to be using other people's money. I have Amazon loans coming at me of like £300,000, which is like incredible amounts of money. I have one for 700,000. And again, a lot of the people doing big numbers are using other people's money to make this work. Now, I'm not an expert at this, and I just want to be careful. My understanding is that in the Muslim world, interest is a problem. So, and obviously when you get loans, there are interests with it. Can you help me understand, like, what is that problem, and are there options that you can talk about and share maybe some insights that you can kind of teach with your program that people can consider around this, that obviously if they are looking to replicate these wonderful 6-figure numbers?
Yeah, sure. So my coaching program does teach from an Islamic angle. I am Muslim myself. So in the Islamic faith, there are some rules around interest. So it's strictly prohibited, as it's seen as something that's unfair on the community at whole. So that's why it's prohibited. That can be, to some extent, a bit of a blockage or hurdle for some Muslims who want to start a business, or in fact for people who may have a poor credit score and can't obtain credit. So we have to look at, well, what are the other options? Because everything is figure outable, nothing is insurmountable. It's time to get creative with our thinking, with our resources, and think, well, how can I overcome this problem? So I'll speak for the Muslim community that I've worked with. Tends to be the demographic, quite large families. A lot of importance is placed on the family unit. So what Muslims can do is maybe start a business with family members. And traditionally, when it comes to buying houses without mortgages, what people will do is something called committee, where they will all put in a pot of money and then split the profit at the end. So it's time to be a bit creative, maybe ask somebody else to shoulder that burden to raise cash flow within a family. So you may have 6 or 7 siblings in that family. If they were to all put a proportion of the money in, then that is a legitimate and permissible in the Islamic faith alternative to raising cash through loans and credit cards, for example. Another option that is a grey area, but 0% interest credit cards can be permissible as long as you make sure that that payment is made in full every month. And it depends how observant you are. There's no judgment from me whatsoever. There's no compulsion in religion. I'm not here to say Islam is right and everyone else is wrong. There are some Muslims who are not particularly observant, and for them, they're quite happy to take loans and deal with interest, and that's their decision. I will just present the information as I know it, and then leave people and trust people to make the decisions that are right for them.
No, I love that. Thank you. And I think what's really interesting is Tony Robbins talked about it. It was during his TED talk, and it was to Al Gore, who it's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of resourcefulness. And because Al Gore said he didn't have the Supreme Court justice on his side, and Tony Robbins said, look, if you'd really believed, if you'd really done it, you would have solved that problem. And I think what's really interesting for what you've just said is the fact that, yes, there are restrictions around faith that might limit your ability to scale, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other options. And what's really interesting is the fact that those other options are applicable to everyone, regardless of faith. And what's interesting is, I know it, my God, when I talk to people, we're like, how do I scale my business? Credit cards, loans, all these things. Be like, there's this family unit right here that you can talk to and get them involved in it. And what's interesting is when they're involved, they might help out, and they might help out doing some prep, or they might help them find some products or do some purchasing, because now they're invested, and now all of a sudden you become a team rather than you on your own running this business. And I think that's a really interesting point. And I think, regardless of faith, that's a great insight that you can look at. So thank you so much for that. And I think that's really important.
You're right, Thomas. Everyone can bring something to the table in that equation. And another issue is wholesale credit accounts. This is probably useful for everyone. If you are making the move into wholesale, after a couple of orders on pro forma basis where you're paying for that stock before it's dispatched, getting credit accounts with 30 days is standard, but if you know how to negotiate and you've got some cash flow behind you, can negotiate 60-day potentially trading terms. So you've got 60 days to take ownership of the products, ship them into FBA, make a sale before you even have to pay for that bill. So that's another important point to explore.
There are a lot of options out there, and it's just up to us to rather be out there finding them, exploring them, and I'm guessing also as well asking people who've already done it and going in that direction because they solved these problems already. So I do want to ask a question. I have a sister. She has a 3-year-old child, and my God, he's a nightmare running around. And she's like, can you look after Sebastian? And it's like, you can't take your eyes off him. So, and the one thing she asked me, which I thought was really important, was managing a business and having a family. Time, children, you're not just got one business, you've got multiple businesses. It's hard. How do you do it? What advice do you have for, should we say, mothers, family members to do this? How does it work? What have you learned?
Yes, so I coach a lot of would-be female entrepreneurs. There's some data which suggests that the vast majority of 7-figure entrepreneurs, you can see where I'm going with this, are male. So when you're told told the first thing you should do, the first hire you should ever make is a VA, I would say no. Poppycock. For a woman with a family, the first hire you should ever make is someone to come and take over the household chores. So whether that's your ironing, whether that's your cooking or your cleaning, that should be the first hire in order to free up your time as a mum to invest into your business. So there's a lot of shame and guilt. We've all heard the phrase mum guilt. There is a lot of shame, particularly in the Muslim community, about outsourcing and buying in outside help. So this is a mindset shift that we have to make if we want to be successful in business. We have to understand we are not supercharged humans. We only can do so much in our God-given 24 hours. So hiring out is the first thing you should do, and do it shamelessly.
I love it. I think it's really interesting. I always look at my business. I'm like, this isn't my business. We're a team. We do this together. Yeah. And we have to approach it in that perspective, because I realize that the people in my company, they work for me so long as they feel part of it and it aligns with their personal goals. But if I approach it as in like, you're my subject, like I'm not going to get anywhere. I need people to have ownership, make decisions, and I think doing that is a really important point. And I agree. Ironically, if you want to, my cleaner's right here, right now, and I love her. Her name's Lucy. She's incredible. She speaks Spanish and I speak English, and we kind of like sign language to each other. Like, yeah, but she's really good. But I'm so grateful that I don't have to do the washing. I'm so grateful that the house is clean every week, and it's because of these things I can now focus more on my business. So I think it's a really important point. Obviously, can I ask, like, time-wise? So obviously, hiring someone, outsource, or should we say, like, hiring someone, family members. Any other top tips you can talk about, like managing family life, like managing multiple businesses, and you have a big social media profile and you're always creating content? How do you manage the time? Are there any hacks that you have?
I am a massive fan of the Pomodoro Technique, particularly because I've got ADHD. My attention to detail and focus hasn't always been my strength. So what I did, rather than just accept it and feel down in the dumps about that, well, what can I lean into? How can I create some superpower from my ADHD? So I use the Pomodoro Technique to undertake short bursts of work, 25 minutes, then a short break where I can nip to the toilet, go and get a coffee, just scroll and waste 5 minutes on social media. Then the timer goes on again and I will churn out another 25-minute chunk of work with hyper focus. So this works really well in terms of time chunking. Diary management, making sure you factor in chunks of time within the week to do the tasks that you need to do, and not just working in your business, but working on your business. So periods of time within the week for growth, for watching podcasts, for reading books, for developing the CEO skills that simply must go hand in hand with scaling your FBA business. FBA is never just a business model in isolation. It's always driven by a CEO. So I spend a lot of time developing my CEO skills, and I'd recommend anyone interested in FBA to do the same.
I love the fact that how you said it, I have ADHD, and a lot of people might be like, that's a limiting factor. And you're like, no, I can use that to my advantage. I can do bursts of 25 minutes and I can do that intensity, and then I can do something else. And how you manage that. And it's turning your, I say weaknesses because it's not, but turning perceived weaknesses into strengths. And I think that's a really important point. You talked about CEO skills there. Can you just give like 1, 2, or 3 kind of areas that you found really important that you've developed maybe over the last few years around CEOs? If anyone's looking to replicate, what kind of development does CEO look like? Skills do they look like?
There's definitely some financial skills required in terms of running a business. If you're approaching FBA never having run a business before, it's important to understand in a very detailed way what you're actually going to be charged. It's very easy to get quite alarmed at the start when you figure out, whoa, Amazon are taking a very healthy chunk here. So understanding what ROI variables we should be looking at, profit margins, understanding your COGS, your cost of goods sold. Also, I'm really into the profit first model. So from the very outset, I think people should be looking at, well, what do I want to take out of this business? We do recommend inside my program heavy reinvestment for the first 12 months, potentially up to every 2 years, but also taking some money out of that business is a requirement to feel that reward. Otherwise, you feel you're just flogging a dead horse, and this FBA business is taking so much and sucking so much energy, money, time for nothing in return. So looking at the profit first model, again, another recommendation from me.
Fantastic. No, I love that. When you said that, I think it's really good because you talked about how much money to start with. You talked about time. I think you said minimum 1,000, 10 hours a week. And then you said, look, actually, we need to be reinvesting for 12 months up to 18 months, or longer. But I still remember, and it was good the fact that you said we need to take money out. And I remember it because I had a conversation with my coach where I was doing the classic thing in the UK. If anyone wants to know, it's about £750. You're below like the tax threshold and the national insurance. So that's what everyone pays themselves. I was just paying myself that. And I said to my coach, it's like, I feel like I'm working so hard flogging the dead horse and I'm not getting any rewards for it. And he's like, why don't you just pay yourself more? And I was like, okay. And what was really interesting is when I started paying myself more, I actually started doing a much better job on my Amazon business and it started growing really well. And what was really interesting is, yes, I'm taking more out of my business, but because of the extra work that I'm doing in, I actually made that back and way more, which was really kind of like initially hard to understand. But once I did it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And so now I'm like, no, I pay myself all the time. I want to be earning money for this. So I think it was really fascinating. So thank you. Thank you so much. Question for you. If anyone wants to get in contact, what's the best way to reach out to you, to learn more about what you're doing? What's the best way?
I am more active on Instagram. So I realized I couldn't dominate all platforms. I don't have a YouTube channel. I just don't have the time to do it well. I think if you're going to embark on anything, you have to be prepared to give it your 110%. So Instagram, Amazon FBA Like a Boss, or my email is info@makeymoney.co.uk.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing everything. And obviously, if anyone wants to know, I will drop links to all those I think you've just mentioned down below. So Samara, I just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for sharing. And hopefully, maybe I can kind of come back in a year's time, catch up, see how you're getting on, and obviously see what else we've learned about the Amazon space, mindset, and obviously running successful businesses at the same time.
Sure.
So thank you so
I
much.
would love to. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.